Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's session. This session is Strengthening Medicare GP Grants Update. My name is Dana Harris from the Primary Health Network, and I'll be facilitating today's session. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land that we each are meeting on today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Before I introduce our speakers for today, there are a few things that I'd like to let you know. This session will be recorded. As attendees, your camera is automatically disabled and your microphone will automatically be muted. So if you do have any questions or would like to make any comments during the presentation, please send them through the question or chat box. These will be answered at the end of this evening's presentation. If we don't have time to get to all of the questions, we will collect the questions and answer them offline and circulate them after the event. And directly after this session, there will be an evaluation that we would be very grateful if you could complete. You will also have a chance to ask any following questions in that survey as well. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our speakers for this evening. Melissa Collins, Grant Manager for the Primary Health Network, and John Bailey, the Executive Manager for Primary Care Improvement at the Primary Healthcare Network. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. John and Mel, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Dana. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people who may be participating in tonight's webinar. I'm on Awabakal land here at Maitland, and we might launch into it. So, as Dana said, I'm John Bailey. I'm the Executive Manager for Primary Care Improvement, and with me is my colleague Mel Collins, who's our Grants Manager. And we're here to provide you with as much information as we have available on the Strengthening Medicare General Practice Grant Program. Thanks, Dana. So just a quick overview, the Strengthening Medicare General Practice Grants Program is an announcement of the Commonwealth Government in the 22-23 October budget. The allocation for this program is $224 million over 2 years and the life of the program. The aim of the program is to support general practice, to expand patient access and to support safe and accessible quality primary care. The program consists of single one-off grants of either $25,000, $35,000 or $50,000 which is available to general practices. Thanks, Dana. In terms of the program objectives, the grant funding has three principal streams. They are to enhance digital health capability, to fast track the benefits of a more connected healthcare system in readiness for meeting future standards, to upgrade infection prevention and control arrangements within general practice to ensure that infectious respiratory diseases such as COVID and influenza and those patients suffering for those can be safely seen face to face. And finally, to maintain or achieve accreditation against RACGP General Practice Accreditation Scheme standards. You can choose either Stream 1, Stream 2 or Stream 3 or a combination of all three, noting that Stream 3 is to maintain or achieve accreditation. For more details about the eligible activities, we've provided a link on the slides here, and they will be available. This link is available on our website. Thanks, Dana. Just wanted to dive a little bit more into each of the streams and particularly highlight some of the areas in which the grant objectives can be used, and later I'll cover things that are out of scope. The first thing is to enhance digital health capability, and some of the examples of that are to enhance general practice IT and software systems, to improve internet connectivity, upskill the digital capability of general practice, and professional assessment of existing digital or cyber security capability and arrangements. All of those are in scope. Thanks, Dana. In terms of infection prevention and control arrangements, in scope are professional assessment of existing infection prevention and control arrangements, infection prevention and control infrastructure, infection prevention and control equipment, and improving infection prevention and control procedures through upskilling of staff. Thanks, Dana. And finally, the last stream is to maintain or achieve accreditation against the RSEGP General Practice Accreditation Scheme standards. And that includes improving accessibility for patients, improvements to quality and safety for patients, supporting the health and safety of staff, improving infection prevention and control procedures, including the upskilling of staff, and the use of consultancy services to undertake practice improvements required to meet RSEGP accreditation requirements. And further examples and about the streams can be found in the quick reference guide for general practice located on our webpage. Thanks, Dana. What can't be funded? Grants can't be used to cover expenses of costs that are outside of those three previously described streams. For business as usual costs associated with operating a general practice, in other words, things like utilities, rents, administration costs, taxes, or consumable products such as personal protective equipment, existing subscriptions or existing recurrent costs, staff wages, salaries for performing business as usual activities or duties. The grants can't be used to fund activities or purchases outside of the activity start date, and Mel will cover off on that later, or after the completion date in the agreement. For the same activities, grants can't be used for the same activities or purchases that you as a grantee have received or will receive funding through any other program. In other words, you can't double dip. For example, the following cannot be funded with the grant under the program, under this program. That includes major capital works, the purchase or acquisition of land, or retrospective costs or expenses. In other words, it needs to be between the activity start date and the activity completion date. Thanks, Dana. I'm going to hand over to Mel Collins now, who will take a bit of a deeper dive into this. Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that high-level overview. I'll get into a little bit more of the detail around the grants themselves. So I'd just like to take everyone through the funding amounts that are available. As we've said, they're 25,000, 35, or 50,000. So the amount allocated to each practice has actually been predetermined by the Department of Health and Aged Care and is based on the department's Medicare, GP, FTE financial year data. So there's a particular formula that the department is using to work out the funding allocations, and a link to that formula is available also in the documentation if you'd like to look into that a little bit further. The determinations were made at the 30th of June 2022, and it is to note that the PHN did not make these determinations. So any unaccredited practice will be treated as less than 7 Medicare GP FTE. So any unaccredited practices will receive 25,000. Any accredited or registered for accreditation practices with less than 7 Medicare GP FTEs will also receive 25,000. From 7 Medicare GP FTEs to 15 will receive 35,000, and over that 15 mark will receive an allocation of 50,000. To also note, if a practice is registered for GST, that will be added to their grant amount. Thanks, Dana. So to be considered eligible for the grants, the general practice must meet following criteria as defined by the RACGP. So there must be an open and operating general practice, and they must meet the core criteria of operating within the model of general practice described as the RACGP. The services are predominantly of a general practice nature, and the practice is capable of meeting all mandatory indicators for the standards of general practice. Again, further information around this eligibility and much more detail can be found in the departmental documents. But for this evening's purposes, we're providing a high-level walkthrough. Thanks, Dana. So the key dates, so the grant round opened on the 21st of April, which was last Friday. At that time, a registration link was sent to all general practices within our region with key documents, including an invitation letter and a quick reference guide. The grant round will close on the 15th of June, 2023, and funding will be provided to general practice as soon as practically possible, and by the 31st of July, 2023. Thanks, Dana. So reporting and compliance. So general practices will be required to provide a simple report listing the grant expenditure by the 31st of July 2024. So essentially there'll be a 12-month window of where you will be able to use that grant funding to achieve the objectives of the grant. This will include a simple financial acquittal and a short evaluation survey about the investments and improvements to your practices. General practice will not be required to submit receipts, but will be required to retain them in line with ATO rules. Given the large nature of the funding program, it's a significant investment by the department, there will be some spot compliance activities undertaken. So if your general practice is identified to participate in those compliance activities, you will be required to submit evidence of expenditure such as receipts and tax invoices. So our strong recommendation is to ensure that you keep all relevant records so that if you are required, you can submit those to the department. Thanks, Dana. Okay, so I'd just like to walk through our process. This grant program is actually the biggest grant activity the PHN has undertaken. We have a large number of general practices across our region, and to that effect, we've invested in a end-to-end grants management system called Smarty Grants. So I'd just like to step through the process. We've streamlined it as much as we possibly can, and we're really hoping it will be a very simple process for general practice. So the first step is for general practice to complete the registration process in Smarty Grants via the link that was sent to general practice last Friday. That information includes just very basic general practice details, ABN details, accreditation status, and what investment streams are being selected. Step 2 is we will process that registration form and then pre-populate a grant agreement based on the information provided in the registration. And then this is sent to the general practice for review and signing. And if I could just emphasize here, if you haven't already completed this process, and you will be doing so in the next few days, if you could really take the time to read the questions and answer accurately, because this will make sure your application is processed quickly. Incorrect information and unclear information could actually delay your grant agreement. Step 3, general practice will then sign the grant agreement and upload it back via their Smarty Grants provided link. So everything is contained in the one section, and you will always be able to go back and reference that grant agreement and your application. Thanks, Dana. Once we've received the signed agreement, and we will process a recipient created tax invoice. So there is no need for a general practice to generate a tax invoice for this grant. The payment will then be provided to the general practice bank account based on the details provided to us, and a remittance advice, will also be provided. Step 5, we will send you the reporting templates as they become available from the department, and we will also send you reminders over the next 12 months to complete those reporting templates if you haven't already done so. And finally, the last step will be for general practice to complete the simple report. Again, upload that via Smarty Grant. So once again, it's all contained in the one file, and that will be the conclusion of the grant process. So hopefully those steps have given you a bit of a snapshot of how the grants will be processed. Thanks, Dana. Just a couple of questions I feel that may be asked. So how long will it take before I receive my grant payment? We will absolutely be doing everything we can to make those payments as soon as we possibly can. Given the large number of grants to process, we do ask for your patience, however, but they will be made in accordance with our payment conditions, which are 30 days after the receipt of the signed grant agreement. Now, we do hope to certainly get those payments out much sooner than that, but they are the standard payment conditions. We did not receive the registration link. What do we do? So the registration link was sent to the primary recorded contact held by the PHN. Now, this may be the practice principal or the owner, it may be the practice manager, or it may be an administration address. We'd ask you to please kindly first check with these contacts and in these mailboxes, also the junk mail, because we know these days a lot of emails can end up in a junk mailbox. And if your registration email is still not found, please email our dedicated email address, which is gpmedicaregrants@thepHN.com, which will, the address is available there in the slides and is also available on our website, and we will be able to assist you. Also, given the large number of inquiries that we have already had and we are expecting, we really do ask if you could please email that dedicated email address. It really is the best way, because that way we'll have a written record of your question or query. We have a log where we're working through all inquiries, and it just works a lot better than a phone call, which is obviously not recorded. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. Hopefully you've got a better idea of how we're working through this really large process. It's a really exciting opportunity, we think, for our region and for general practice. And we, from our side, are really trying to do everything we can to make the process as smooth as we can for general practice. So Dana, I think we could now open up to any questions or that we can answer. And if we don't have the answer, we will certainly take them on notice and put together a frequently asked questions for distribution and publication on our website.
Excellent. So we do have some questions in the chat box. The first one is, if we have multiple practices, same ABN, but different bank accounts, can I register as a supplier via the single user individually?
So in that case, if we have a parent company, so to speak, so there'll be one ABN, there should be separate registrations made for each individual physical site, and within that application include the relevant bank account for that practice.
Excellent. Anything else to add there, John? All good? Excellent. Is there one grant for each accredited practice where there is more than one accredited site? So that's a similar question, but yeah. Excellent.
Yep. So our advice is that it is related to the physical general practice sites. So whilst they may have the one ABN, if they are a standalone physical general practice, they will be eligible for a grant. Just a note, with eligibility, if we are doing a lot of cross-checking, so we're checking our records, the department records, if there are any questions at all, we will always come back to you. So, yep. Thanks,
The
Dana.
next one is, will there be a copy of the presentation available? There will be on our website. It is being recorded tonight, and it will be sent out to you as soon as it's uploaded to the PHN library in the coming days as well. The next question is, what happens if we have money left over?
Okay, well, that's a really great question. We hope that you don't. We hope that the 12 months that have been provided will give ample opportunity for expenditure of the funds. The department has been very flexible and quite broad in what they're allowing for the grant funding to be spent on. However, within the guidelines, it does state if there are unexpended funds, there is potential that they will need to be returned. However, we will encourage everyone to fully expend their grant amount over the next 12 months.
The next one is, do you need to have a university degree in writing grant applications, or will everyone receive the grant, if eligible, of course?
Well, I'm not sure if there is actually a university qualification in grant writing, but I would like to have one. We have made it super simple. It is very basic information that is required. It is literally fill in your details, tell us your accreditation status, tell us what stream you will be interested in applying for, and basic details, bank details, GST details, those types of things. I would actually like to add, I should have mentioned it previously, there will be the opportunity to change your stream later on. So say, for example, you do get 6 months down the track and you have spent as much funding as you can on digital technology, and you decide actually you would like to do some work in the infection prevention and control space. There will be a facility where you can then actually add an additional investment stream, so then you can go forth and spend some more funding. But we will be sending out instructions and further detail once we actually get the first round of payments happening.
Excellent, thank you. Is the ABN the same as the ACN asked for in the form?
Yeah, if you don't have an ACN, that's absolutely fine. Just please put in your ABN. Smarty Grants actually has an inbuilt lookup to the ASIC records, so we'll be able to pull all relevant information as well. So the ABN is the most important factor.
Excellent. Could we apply for more than one type of grant in the same practice?
If you're meaning investment streams, yes, you can apply for 1, 2, or 3 investment streams. If you're meaning individual grants for the same general practice, no, there is only one grant per general practice.
So in other words, the maximum I can receive is as was defined in the table, but I
Correct.
can spread the spend over 1, 2, or 3 streams over the next 12 months. But if I don't spend all of it and I get to 6 months in and I need to add another stream, there will be an opportunity.
Correct.
Excellent. What happens if you spend the money on something you shouldn't?
Well, as mentioned within the presentation, the department is quite serious around compliance. It is obviously a very massive investment in our region and nationally. So there will be spot compliances. So I certainly can't advise what will happen, but we will be encouraging everyone to ensure that they adhere to the guidelines to the best of their ability. If you have at any stage any queries or questions, you can always reach out via that dedicated email mailbox, and we can seek further clarification for you from the department. However, the guidelines are quite straightforward. As I said, they are very broad, and you know, you have been given information around what is not eligible for funding and what is eligible, and we would encourage everyone to stay well within those guidelines.
And if in doubt, ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't know, we will seek further clarification on your behalf. So that way you know that you are staying within the guidelines.
There is a question here about, can we go back to the slide about what's not covered? I'm happy to do that, but I'm also happy to send it out afterwards, depending on what we think would be better. Yeah, I can send it out afterwards.
Yeah, and that information is also contained in the quick reference guide for GPs, which should basically become the go-to document for general practice for this grant exercise.
Excellent. When would each general practice know what their GP FTE is in order to apply for the application?
Okay, so as that has been predetermined, what we're asking for is the registration process to be completed. We will then auto-populate your grant agreement with your allocated funding. So when you receive your pre-populated grant agreement back for signing and review, it will indicate whether it's a $25,000, $35,000 or $50,000 grant.
And that will be based on the number of Medicare registered GPs for the 21-22 financial year.
Yep. And there is a link within the guidance document that can take you further into that formula if you'd like to have a look at it.
Excellent. The next question is about start dates. They said, we ordered an increase in cybersecurity some months ago. Finally, it's arrived during May, but we haven't yet paid for it. Could this be covered?
I would request that question to come through to our GP Medicare grants mailbox. I would prefer not to answer that question without seeking some further advice, if that's okay.
We have a couple of questions asking for that email address, and again, I will send it out as a resource to first thing tomorrow, so everybody has it in their mailbox as well. Are there any, since there are limited spots, do we anticipate any clinics missing out on grants?
Again, that's something I sorry, start again. The allocation to Hunter New England Central Coast Primary Health Network has been based on departmental data and data that we've provided to the department. We are confident that all eligible practices within our region will receive allocation of one of those grant levels, and we will work closely with the department to ensure that the funds will be fully expended across our region. So yeah, we are confident that no eligible general practice will miss out on funding. Anything to add to that, John?
No, just to say that a lot of work's being done in the background and in preparation to make sure that the allocation that we've been given matches the data that the department holds, and we've attempted to verify that to the best of our ability.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is, can you prepay for services provided after the completion date? So prepay them before and utilise after.
Okay, again, that would be a question I would appreciate via the GP mailbox. Some of these are great questions. Some of them are not always really, starkly evident in guidelines. They may be there. I might just have to go back and do a little bit of digging. And if they're not, they're equally great questions because we can put those to the department and get clarification for everyone.
Excellent. What happens if we say we're going to use 3 streams or spend it all on 1 stream?
That's okay. We would just ask you to update your stream selection, which will be via a form that we'll send out once we get through the first rounds of actually paying the grants and people getting underway. So it'll be quite a simple process to change a stream.
Could you give some specific examples on what funding could be used for, in particular within the accreditation stream?
Again, I guess this presentation was quite designed to be high level. In the documentation, there is certainly more detailed examples. We didn't really want to delve right down in the detail. I know John ran through some of the examples around. So I would encourage people to have a look at those guidelines. There's a really great fact sheet which for each stream will give, maybe 10 different examples. If it's not clear, please again email
Ask the question. Yeah.
Email the inbox.
What was the email address that the registration was sent from?
It actually came from GP Medicare grants at thephn.com.au. Hence why I do encourage people to just double check in the junk mailboxes, because these days, and rightly so, we've got such good security measures. Sometimes things will end up there.
And the time frame for that email being sent was?
That was sent on Friday
Of last week.
Yeah, 21st. And obviously, given then weekends, public holidays, people on leave, they may have been missed. So this is why we scheduled this information session this week, so people could now perhaps have a bit of a follow-up.
What is the definition of a practice that is primarily a GP practice? We are a provider of mixed services and currently have 3 GPs.
I would refer you to the RACGP core criteria. That is what will define an eligible general practice. If you still have uncertainty around that, again, please email the GP Medicare grants mailbox and we can do some investigation for you.
Excellent. Does the FTE include registrar GPs?
I'm not aware of the really detailed makeup of the formula. John, if you had any insight.
Look, that's a question we need to ask the department. From the data that I looked at, I don't know the practices well enough to know whether the numbers were GPs, GP registrars. So let's just seek some clarification on that and provide that advice.
Yep, perfect.
Excellent. Is it a first in best dress basis?
No, not at all. We do encourage you to get in as quickly as possible though, because we have a lot of processing to do, but it's, as John said before, we've done a lot of work with the department to ensure that we have adequate funding for our region. So it's not a first in best dressed. However, the sooner you participate, the sooner we can organise your grant payment.
So the key dates there were 15th of June, the grant round closes. So, get in and get it done. And the funding will be provided as soon as practicable and by the 31st of July. One piece of advice I would say is the sooner you get in, the sooner you receive your money and the more time you've got to spend that and move forward. So don't leave it to the last minute. It is not a first in best dressed. It will be dealt with as we receive the grant application, the signed, completed grant application. So you need to make sure that you've followed that process and then you go into the processing pool. One question I've got, Mel, that we probably should answer is who within the general practice can sign the grant agreement?
Needs to be the authorised person within the general practice. So whoever is authorised under, their delegations, whether it's the ABN holder themselves, that is their, whatever the arrangement is within that general practice, but they will be the legal grantee. So they need to be an authorised person.
Excellent. Is there a minimum number of hours a practice must be open per week to be eligible?
Again, I'd refer back to the RACGP guidelines, but that is actually, it is a good question. We'll take that also on notice and just see if the department has any very specific direction around that.
Excellent. Will grant money be a taxable income for practices?
We always advise general practices seek their own taxation advice, and that's it does talk in the guidelines that it is taxable income, but again, it definitely needs to every general practice needs to seek their own advice around that.
Yeah, and it does have GST added, which would imply that it is taxable.
Correct.
The next question is, when can we expect the grant application? I completed my registration on Friday and I just want to make sure I haven't missed it.
Sure. We are working very hard through all. We've received a really great number of applications, actually, straight up. So we're working through those as quickly as we can. And I would say if you completed that last Friday, if all the information is correct and there's we're able to populate your grant agreement, I'd be looking for it early next week to mid next week. So yeah, it's, as I said, it is a very big process for the PHN, and we're working really hard behind the scenes to get everything out as soon as we can. But we are also reliant on accurate information and data. So the more accuracy within those registration forms, the quicker we'll be able to get grant agreements out.
And key to that is the ABN, the name of the practice, the registered name of the practice, and the bank details, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. So the next one is, if I wish to change my PMS software, can I use grant funding for that?
John, I'll defer to you. So PMS software is practice management.
Management software. Look, I think that's a question we would need to ask, because it doesn't quite fit within the clear information we have at this stage. It talks about general practice IT systems, but it doesn't talk about whether that's an upgrade or a change, continuing with the same product. So let's ask that question. So in other words, the framing of the question is, if I'm using PMS practice management software A and I want to change to product B, can I use the funding for that? So if whoever asked that question wants to send through the specific example, we'll ask it, but we'll ask a general question of the department on that, because it's not quite clear cut.
When we submit the application, how long before the return agreement to sign? Or we return the agreement to sign?
Similar to the question just previously, as soon as we can, where if you've you know, put something in last week or over the weekend, I would say be looking out for it in early next week. So we're looking to turn them around absolutely as rapidly as we can.
The next question is in regards to questions taken on notice. Will we circulate them to everybody in attendance? And yes, we will. Unless it's been asked to go personally to the inbox for a personalised question, and then that will be answered directly to that person. The link for the webinar will be available on our website. I'll send it out again after. You'll get access to it at the library link in your email to say thank you for attending, but I will also send it out again once it's uploaded to our website, which should hopefully be tomorrow, and if not, early next week. And I'll send out a reminder to say it's been uploaded. The next question is, if GPs are not actively working, can they be included in the number of GPs?
So the FTE at the 21-22 financial year, we would need to check with the department whether they needed to have billed within that period to have been counted in the FTE head counts. Again, that's a question we'll ask. So in other words, if there's a GP who's working in the practice but not billing, probably not, but let's seek some clarification.
Excellent. How about if we upgrade or change servers of computer/digital data storage for practices, so similar to the other question asked?
Yeah, ask the question through the GP Medicare grants inbox and we'll give you a specific response.
Yeah, and I would just point out in the quick reference guide for general practices, there is on page 5 some tables that just dig down a little bit further into those items that are eligible. So you may find a lot of the answers around those types of questions within that table.
So we'd encourage you to read that first, and if it's not clear, then ask the question.
Yep.
As part of the accreditation process, can we pay/hire a consultant to assist with the process? Can the grant be used for that?
I will answer that one. Yes, because consultant services to undertake the practice improvements required to meet RAC GP accreditation requirements are eligible activities.
Yeah.
Excellent. What happens if we have new GPs who have started in the practice after 30th of June 2022 and your FTE has increased?
Again, that is a question around the eligibility, the formula that's used. If you can please send that in to us and we can inquire on your behalf.
With the specific details, including the start dates of any new GPs.
Excellent. That was the last question. Are there any more at the moment?
Just one thing, Dana. I just wanted to flag for everyone that while the program is a national program, the approach of delivering these grants may vary from PHN to PHN. We're using a particular application, a particular set of processes. When you're talking to your colleagues across the country and in different PHNs, please don't get confused by their process versus our process. We've tried to do this as simply and as effectively as we can. We've got a lot of experience in doing these sorts of grants, not of this volume, but we have got experience. So you may hear from your colleagues that they need to do X, Y, or Z. That's for that PHN to determine. We're focused on getting these grants to general practices who are eligible in our region as quickly and as efficiently as we can.
Excellent. There is one other question that's popped up as well. If a practice changes ownership, does the grant remain with the practice?
There are specific instructions regarding that within the guidelines. So I think the short answer is yes, the grant would reside with the practice as such. But if that is your actual situation, please have a look in the guidelines for the guidance. And if that's not clear, please come back to us.
With specific details.
Yeah, thanks.
I have also just put the email address in the chat box as well for those who can access it. I will also send it out again along with the slides when the recording is uploaded as well. But just if anybody was eager to send it off tonight. Were there any other questions?
No?
No. If not, then that's fine. We can. There will be a chance for you to answer questions, to ask questions in the evaluation survey as well. That will pop up at the end of tonight's session. If you do have any further questions, please ask them in there or send them through to the GP Medicare grant. We will work on putting together a question and answer and send that out as well over the coming weeks. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. And we look forward to...
Can I just thank you, Dana, and you, Mel, for your work in putting this together, and Mel and the team for managing the grants process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. And thank you, John and Mel, for being with us this evening. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. I never know how to leave this thing.